way into the active RNA, right, via the transcriptase processes. It's the RNA, and that's malleable, right? That's
Mhm.
malleable, the RNA. It's like the difference between the blueprint that the architect designs or draws. That's the DNA. But then the way that the builder actually builds the house, builds the structure, that's 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 the expression of that DNA into that three-dimensional form that is the body. And that can be modified very specifically and strategically by lifestyle elements.
All right. Welcome to another edition of Talking with Kevin and Son, featuring people you should know. I am Kevin Mclemore. I'm your show host. I'm a four-time published author. Friends say I'm a wordsmith and mindset messenger. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Our mission is to give power to your voice, inspire, share stories and experiences and perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is very simple, folks. We create hope, helping other people every single day. Now, whatever your objective is, successful people like my guest today, they create a framework around their day-to-day lives that not only enhances their lives, but many times they pour into others. Pharmaceutical companies are a multi-billion dollar industry, with one out of every five people being diagnosed with high blood pressure. And like me, that's very physical fit and active, we're told that it was genetic. We're going to find answers to that question. When it comes to healthcare, we have to draw a line between profit and humanity in our healthcare. Today's guest is a trailblazer of restorative healthcare. Born in Vienna, Austria, she grew up immersed in a natural healing. How was I going to say that? Anyway, shaping a relentless pursuit in the root cause of medicine. After overcoming her own personal struggles, she made it her mission to help others reclaim their vitality and break free from the healthcare model. Founder of Reboot Center, which from what I hear is a very beautiful place. Today's guest is redefining healthcare through a mature alliance in biohacking, metabolic optimization, and cutting edge restorative therapy. In my opinion, today's guest is one of the greatest assets and best kept secrets when it comes to performance, longevity, and resilience. So let's welcome to the show a trailblazer, a visionary, a champion for the people when it comes to the truth of healthcare. Our resident expert, Dr. Jennifer Ruthensteiner. Hopefully, I pronounced your name right.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you for that beautiful, wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. So my last name is tricky. It's Ruthensteiner. It's
Ruthensteiner,
also,
and I said Rosensteiner.
yeah, it's
Ruth.
pretty close, pretty
All
close.
right. It's not even any place close. You're being polite. It's Ruthensteiner. And I practiced that. Now I don't know why I got it wrong, but thanks for calling me out on that. I make mistakes. So tell us a little bit about yourself. And by the way, Vienna is one of my favorite places. I went there last year and I'm going back again this year, come June. And you grew up there. Beautiful place, beautiful people, great food.
I
Tell us a
did.
little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up, well, as you mentioned, I was born in Vienna, and then I grew up half of each year during my childhood living just outside of Vienna, and then the other half living here where I live now, which is on Whidbey Island in the Puget Sound region of Washington State. And so, throughout my whole childhood, up until I was perhaps 11 or so, I would spend the summer months in Austria, and then I was always here during the rainy season. So I didn't actually get to see an, a beautiful Washington State summer until I was 12 or even 13. Uh, yeah, and it was a fantastic childhood. It was very eclectic. It was a bit different than most people's, I would think. But I would say that there were a few significant challenges that I faced that brought me to being who I am now and doing what I do now that were very informative to my process during those formative stages of my life. And I don't know if you want me to sort of get into that, but the first of those was an unexplained, still to this day, they don't really know exactly what it was, but it was defined as a tumor in my knee. And that landed me in the hospital for about 6 weeks or so when I was around 4. And that was my earliest memories of my life were inside of that hospital in the children's ward with, the fluorescent lighting and the gray walls. And I came out of that. And then a few years later, around 8, I had a massive case of blood poisoning, also for no apparent reason. There was a red line that was creeping up my leg, and that again, my mom took me to the doctors, and that was an interesting process there. And then the third that really defined my direction was Chernobyl, which happened when I was 11, and we were only living 800 miles or so away from the Chernobyl site. And I recall we had a big veggie garden. My brother and I would always go out mushrooming, and for that entire summer, all the way through until probably a year or two after that, we weren't allowed to pick any root vegetables, eat any mushrooms, like nothing that grew really out of the soil or in the soil. And from that point onward, I had uh, I had health challenges. I had fatigue. I didn't really know it because I didn't know what to compare it to. I just, now looking back, I was one of those kids that just powered through, even though she didn't feel very well. And I was really active. I was really active in track and cross country all the way through my high school years, as well as I was a violinist. And so I had lots of outside activities that kind of kept me going, but I slugged through for a long time, and it's been a process getting to finally test and recognize root cause of why I was feeling the way that I was feeling, that ultimately culminated in low thyroid function, chronic fatigue, iron deficiency, anemia, uh, mercury levels so high that the I actually was tested along with all of my other classmates during one of my med school classes. We did toxicity analysis, and I was like 3, 4 times as high as anybody else on mercury. So that started a process of really digging deep and understanding how the body works, what insults are cause certain types of distress in the body, and really how to get back to restoring and optimizing health. And so I teach now to my patients and clients what I myself personally went through.
All
And
right.
here,
So in your particular practice, I think there are 14 states that license restorative medicine. Am I correct?
give or take, yeah.
Give or take.
Mhm.
Um, with your own personal healthcare struggles, is this what started you on your journey in order to find a better way of treating your patients? Like I said in the top of the show, most of the time when you go to a doctor, what happens? They tell you this is a problem, and they give you some excuse. It's like mine. I'm going to ask you about this because I hear it all the time online that these wonderful people have a natural cure for blood pressure, but it takes them 20 minutes to get to the answer. And by the time you get the 20 minutes, you've lost interest in listening to them recite all the other things that go along with it. And hopefully we'll get some answers here. Restorative medicine against traditional medicine, what's the difference?
Well, traditional medicine is one that historically it started towards the end of the 19th century and then in the 1900s, and it gained more and more traction. And it was really based on like the early roots of Western medicine, or what we call now traditional medicine, comes out of treating a set of symptoms with a strong medication. I think one of the earliest cases of that was treating syphilis with mercury. And so those are kind of the origins of this pharmaceutical based way of managing disease that now is it's ever growing and present pretty much everywhere in the world, but it came out of foundationally really from the United States.
Okay. Well,
So,
I will say the one analogy you you used up until 1974, the treatment of sickle cell should have been an embarrassment to the medical personnel because they actually allowed people of color to have syphilis, and they wanted to diagnose and watch the progression of syphilis and not actually treat them. They were given placebos in order to do that, and that ended in 1974. So when I look back at modern medicine, just the same way with a lot of other things in history, there was always a pill for something, and they
mhm.
normally used outside of animals, but testing on human beings, they used the people that were the poor and that they thought were expendable for that. Um, so you brought up the fact that the pills do not create the cure. The pills basically are directed towards minimizing some of the cost, but not curing anything. Am I right in my alignment?
Yes, to some degree. So I would actually break up Western medicine into different elements in terms of um, there's acute conditions and there's chronic, more sort of lifestyle driven conditions.
Hmm.
And then there's really genetically driven conditions. And I feel like for acute conditions, very often a pharmaceutical approach is a life-saving approach because it's fast, it's it's strong, and it does drive down that acute disease, which sometimes might actually be the better solution. Sometimes it's not. It just depends on the individual acute condition. Like for example, uh, like a really, really high fever, right? Or a, a very significant infection. Yeah, using antibiotics may actually be the better option to save the life of, of that individual. But then there's this whole area of lifestyle induced chronic disease, which is really what the vast majority of our dire health situation is here, especially in the Western world, right? The type 2 diabetes, the heart disease, the even the cancer, the fatty liver, the digestive issues that people have, all those, that's such a bulk of why people go to the doctor and why people are on medications long term is for these types of conditions. And that's where uh, traditional pharmaceutical based treatment may not be the best solution because it just manages or mitigates the condition, but it
Right.
doesn't actually resolve it. It doesn't touch on the underlying reasons, and it doesn't help the individual reverse that state of dis-ease, which can very often be reversed. So that's where restorative medicine and the way that I practice really, in my opinion, is exemplary is that it both teaches individuals how to live their life to minimize disease progression, but then also add in uh, certain like nutritional elements or other treatments, herbs and such, to help to get the body back to being strong enough so that it can uh, reverse or optimize or rebuild that cellular health so that the organ can work more effectively or the disease process can actually be stopped.
All right,
So
let me ask you this because I know a couple of weeks ago I got my blood work done, and for the first time after a year or two, I've been battling issues with my heart, high blood pressure, and I keep being prescribed medication. Some of the medication, the side effects were worse, a lot worse than the symptoms I was actually experiencing. One, I had damage to my heart after taking the COVID test. Happened almost immediately. I'd never had a history. The other, high blood pressure at 35 years of age. My blood pressure had been normal, and then 35, they said I had genetic high blood pressure. And I'm curious. I mean, being in the health and fitness business, is it really true that you can have genetic high blood pressure? I wasn't born with it, so I'm just curious. And these people that are on the internet saying that there's a natural way of stop to be able to stop taking lisinopril and some other medications. Is that true or not? And how would you address if I came to you for help to get off my medication? How would you address that?
sure. There may be genetic, you might have a genetic predisposition in your DNA to not express certain uh, genes that help to activate uh, vitamins or antioxidants that are important in blood pressure regulation, right? Like, for example, CoQ10, activating that, or uh, activating the B vitamins. So if there's a genetic predisposition, it could be that there is a potential for a genetic potential for a person to have have a their blood pressure drive up more easily. However, that being said, the way that the DNA then gets encoded in a way into the active RNA, right, via the transcriptase processes, it's the RNA, and that's malleable, right? That's
Mhm.
malleable, the RNA. It's like the difference between the blueprint that the architect designs or draws, that's the DNA. But then the way that the builder actually builds the house, builds the structure, that's 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 the expression of that DNA into that three-dimensional form that is the body. And that can be modified very specifically and strategically by lifestyle elements, right? So, for example, if somebody eats a low quality Western diet, that's kind of like using poorer quality construction materials
Right.
for that structure that is the body versus a really high nutrient dense um, organic, low toxin diet, and that will build a different structure, better building materials. So I feel like, yeah, there might be a little bit of a genetic predisposition, but are those genes going to be turned on or are they going to be turned off? So I feel like we have a lot more power and control over that than we're led to believe. And I feel like even if somebody has a genetic predisposition, there's so much that can be done to help the heart and any kind of body system for that part to be as optimized as possible.
Yeah, there is a guy, I don't know if you've ever watched his show, Don't Die. It's a billionaire by the name of Brian Johnson, that
Mhm.
he is spending his fortune over trying to defy aging and
Right.
extend his life long before its limit. Have you ever watched this show?
I haven't watched the show, but I've read his website and I've checked him out a few times and yeah.
Yeah, you have to watch his show because
Mhm.
um, I have my thoughts for one, is that he's spending a lot of money in order to prolong his life. But if he lives beyond 150 years, most of the life that he has will probably die before he does. And so I question what life really looks like when you're all alone, just taking medication over 100 pills during the course of a day. Now, I do know I make an investment. I won't say I spend a lot of money into rejuvenating my body on a cellular basis because I'm constantly battling the high blood pressure, trying to get out of my system what was put into my system with COVID, trying to get that out. And I think for the last 2 years, I've done a great job. You brought up and conversations really about NAD. Most people don't know what NAD is. I can't pronounce some of the words, but I do know I use it for my concussion and trying to rejuvenate a lot of the things that on a cellular basis that have failed. Can you explain to us what NAD is and what the benefits, and if people should actually invest the time and expense in applying this to their healthcare?
Yeah, so NAD or NAD plus is really it's the it's one of the master regulators of cellular health. It fuels super critical processes in within our cells to keep them functioning and really healthy, and so that they can repair internally and so that they can thrive for longer. And basically, what that does is it reduces the cellular turnover, which helps the aging process as well. So it's it's the main element that's essential for ATP synthesis, which is basically energy synthesis. ATP is sort of the cellular form of energy, and that happens in the mitochondria. So if you've heard of mitochondria, they're the energy powerhouses within our cells, and what their main output is this NAD. And the healthier the mitochondria, the more effectively they can make NAD, the more energy we have. It kind of translates into that. So NAD plus also helps in terms of DNA repair. So as we go through life, our DNA, it also needs sort of uh, micro repair processes on an ongoing basis, and so the ATP helps for for with those processes. And also, NAD plus is really important for controlling inflammation, and that specifically plays out in terms of the whole chronic lifestyle induced inflammatory processes that people have, including dementias, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and so forth. So NAD really is one of those main building blocks that a Western lifestyle, meaning a low nutrient dense diet, chronic stress, chronic sleep deprivation, and chronic toxic insults or a high toxic load can really deplete. And so some of the precursors to NAD that help to uh, improve your NAD levels include things that can actually be taken in supplemental form or even in injectable form. And the main ones that are not cost prohibitive are NMN and NR plus. Those are the main ones. The third thing that I like to really emphasize is just mitochondrial health. Give the mitochondria the food that they need, and they'll more effectively make NAD plus.
All right. All right. You've given a lot of information. How do people get in touch with you if they want to do a deep dive into or work with you on this? Because I know you do some coaching, some teaching, you do
Mhm.
workshops. How do they get in touch with you?
Sure. I work with patients and clients in two primary ways. So within Washington State, I do restorative care as a sort of in a patient-physician relationship. I have a membership-based practice. And so that's if you live in Washington State. And for my patients, I also do like restorative functional medicine. I do some primary care, and for my patients as well, I can order labs. I can send out for imaging. I'm basically their go-to restorative physician. Outside of Washington State, I do worldwide coaching, and that's more on a like consultative basis. So somebody would sign up for a coaching session, and the initial coaching session, which is longer, I go over like what the health history is, what their current symptoms are, what they're currently doing lifestyle wise, what they're currently taking, and then almost more important than all of that is where do they want to see themselves? Where do they want to go health wise? And then just creating a plan and giving that back to them for them to get local support if needed, if they need blood work done, or if they need extra imaging done, or if they need testing done, or if they want to, if they need somebody on the ground. So then that would be a like triaging with their local provider. But that's the two main ways that I provide um, restorative care services.
And you have a social media presence that people could reach out to you and talk to you?
I do. So I have a website, which is rebootcenter.com. I'm primarily active on Instagram, and the handle for that is at Reboot Center. And then, or just Reboot Center. And then same with Facebook, it's Reboot Center.
All right. So let's get back into restorative healthcare. We talked at the top. I mentioned at the top of the show hour. I mentioned longevity and what are some of the key habits to optimizing optimal longevity.
I would say the main key habits are the simplest ones, but though they're simple, they're not necessarily easy because we as humans, we easily habituate into not necessarily the best habits. And so, but in a nutshell, really, if a person wants to reset, restart to optimize towards longevity, or even to optimize towards uh, uh, an, the best health span possible. And a health span is the number of years one lives in good health. So, which is different from this longevity, because you could live until 120, but have, from when you're 100 to 120 be in a wheelchair. Well, that's not health span. Health span is when you're still active and walking and maybe even running and being able to play with your, great great grandchildren at 110 or 115. That's my goal, by the way. So, but the main habits I would say to implement easily are um, hydration with clean water.
What does clean water mean?
Yeah. So clean water is the closest a person can get to spring water.
All right.
Whatever that means in your part of the world, in their part of the world, it's the closest one can get to spring water, which is not distilled water, which is not even necessarily like reverse osmosis water
It's the
or
water coming off the side of the mountain.
yeah, it's the water coming out of the side of the mountain. So as close to that as possible. Good quality well water that's maybe been filtered is it can be really close to that. Okay, so clean water, and my typical starting amount for that is to drink half of one's body weight in ounces of water. So for example, if one weighs 140 pounds, that would be 70 ounces of water. That would be a ballpark. And then to add an extra 8 ounces for each vice. So a cup of coffee or a serving of alcohol or a half hour run, or
But
something.
doesn't coffee because of the caffeine dehydrate you?
Yes. So you want to
Okay.
drink an extra 8 ounces for every serving of coffee.
Okay.
Yep. And in Vienna, actually, in Austria, when you go to a coffee house and they serve you coffee, they always serve it with a glass of water on the side.
I will tell you this. One of the reasons why I'm going to be going back to Vienna, one is all the foods that I normally would not eat in the United States, I was able to eat and not feel any of the side effects. The
Yep.
other, I grew up with a sweet tooth, and because of what I do and trying to control my weight, I don't eat many sweets, and the pastries over there was great.
Hmm.
The lifestyle that they have over there, stop work in the middle of the afternoon, and people, everyone's walking over there. I love Vienna. Your food, they don't use any of the dyes. One of my meals when I was over there, the chef said that my fish in the morning was swimming in the ocean, and now it's sacrificed to be on my plate. It was that fresh. So
Or maybe it was swimming in a lake.
swimming in a lake, but it was by far one of the most pleasant experiences when I talked about healthy living as a population. Nothing like what I see here in the United States.
Hmm.
We're a
Hmm.
fast food driven economy, quick. We claim that it's nutritious because it looks like meat, has vegetables and condiments on it, and we pretend like we're eating our vegetables, but we make a huge sacrifice. Um, Food and performance. How how important is that concern? I train a lot of athletes, and one of the things is you've already mentioned hydration. The other, they consume items, but they train like there's no tomorrow. Foods that are performance based, if you can kind of elaborate and kind of run down some of those things that we definitely should have in our body as part of our regular nutrition plans while we're active.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was actually my second point. So the first point in terms of the major lifestyle changes to implement, one is water, the second one is food, and the third is sleep. So with regard to food, specifically when it comes to performance, so I'm an ultra marathoner. I run crazy long distances and I love it. So I have to be really cognizant in terms of my macronutrients. But with regard to like a really good quality, nutrient dense diet, I generally say start with a diet that's paleo, high veggie keto, and anti-inflammatory. So once again, paleo, high veggie keto, and anti-inflammatory. So that typically the way that that looks is um, quality fat, quality protein at the right amount, depending on uh, male, female, size, and then how much exercise output a person has. And then carbs mostly in the form of vegetables, maybe with a little bit of gluten-free grains, especially if a person is underweight. So, for example, what I eat on a daily basis. So I've got sort of I've got my diet when I train, and I've got a diet when I don't train. And so when I train, it's a lot more protein. So I'll eat. 3, 4 times a week, I'll eat some meat, uh, 4 ounces, 5 ounces of meat. And then the other days, I eat a lot of seafood. We live on an island. My parents actually raise oysters and mussels. And so I eat a lot of shellfish. That's grown or raised in very clean water here. So I'm really lucky that way. And typically with that meat or the seafood, I will add in some vegetables and I'll have a massively huge salad. Once in a while, I'll have some rice or some quinoa on the side, but typically I try to avoid the grains. And then one of my staples is avocados. I will have at least one, if not 2 or 3 avocados a day. I eat a lot of eggs, so I'll have probably an average of 2 to 3 eggs a day. And the two other staples would be nuts. So I'll have at least 4, if not 6, up to 10 Brazil nuts a day, and then any other combination of different nuts, from walnuts to pecans to almonds, and they're all organic. With the fattier foods like nuts, I will always get them organic. With the
Right.
meats, I'll always eat them organic. And so on a non-training day, I'll just cut down the number of calories and I won't have so much protein. The other thing that I do is I do intermittent fasting. So on my training days, I will sometimes actually train in the mornings and then not have my brunch, my first meal of the day, until after. But on non-training days, I will have 2 meals a day, one at noon and then one maybe at 6 p.m. So I do 6-hour intermittent fasting on a typical day.
Now, this is a question because I've always said in my profession that a baby requires nutrition every 2.5 hours.
Mhm.
When you are, I mean, we all intermittent fast. We all do when we're sleeping. And then you're prescribing doing that during the course of a day, but an active person needs support in there. I know, 15 to 20 minutes after you've had a workout, you need to reintroduce protein back in your system. Uh, Fasting, doesn't that at some point recalculate your metabolism from working as efficient as it should be?
I think fasting makes your metabolism more efficient.
Why?
So it's a feast and famine approach, right? When you feast, you have a big meal, and that big bolus of food goes through your digestive system, your stomach, and then your small intestine and your large intestine get really active, and they process the food and the enzymes, and the hydrochloric acid does all the digestion. You absorb the nutrients, and then you excrete the waste products. That all happens in sort of in one get-go. The body works really hard, and then it takes a break. And then it it's almost like it's given a little bit of a nap, right? And all you put through during that time is maybe some water or some tea or some gentle liquids. And then you feast again. And that feast famine cycle, I'm not talking about doing this like for kids. This is more for, anywhere between 20 and 65-year-olds who are in good health. So when you're not feasting, when you're in famine, your body goes into cleanup mode because it doesn't have to spend all its energy digesting, which takes a lot of energy. Then it uses that ATP to cleanse the cells, for the liver to do its internal detoxification, for the lymphatic system, which is one of the primary ways that the body pulls toxins out of the cells and the tissues and the periphery, the arms and legs and so forth, and the brain, and puts it via the thoracic duct, which is right here, into the intestinal tract, where then the body can excrete those toxins. So that is that is upregulated during a fasting state. we detoxify a lot while we sleep. Why? Because we're not putting any food into our systems during that time. So I
Right.
feel like the fasting state is really important in terms of the the cleansing aspect, the daily detox, but then also while you're fasting and you're not um, putting any calories into your body actually has to go, if the fast is long enough, it starts making sugar via this process called gluconeogenesis. So it's glucose, and the neogenesis is creation. So it's
Mhm.
creating its glucose via this gluconeogenesis process from stores. And if you do that on a daily basis, you get into gluconeogenesis on a daily basis, you're actually really empowering your body to be able to auto balance its own or auto regulate its blood sugar. And I actually noticed that for myself really significantly from when I was in my 20s all the way until now. When I was in my 20s, I would get the hangry episodes, right? Where if
Mhm.
I didn't eat soon enough after my previous meal, I would get irritable, tired, groggy, depressed, all those
Time for
symptoms.
a Snickers bar.
Yeah, like I really, really felt that. And my friends can attest to that. Like I would really get hangry. And then as I started learning more and more about intermittent fasting and about not snacking between meals, I can literally go 2, 3 days without food now if I did a real fast and be totally fine. And that's because I've trained my body to have that resilience so that when it's not getting the external, um, you know, caloric load, it just kind of goes into a deeper cleansing. Um, let's let's balance ourselves and let's like mobilize the resources mode. And it's been awesome. And I feel like now my energy, my resilience, my stamina, my mental clarity at I'm 47 now. I feel like it's better than when I was in my 30s. And I attribute a lot of that to intermittent fasting.
All right. All right. So I'm a lot older than you. So I would say you're just a baby. I do have this question. It wasn't on my list of questions I wanted to ask you, but it just happened to pop up. There's been a big surge with creatine, especially women going through hormonal changes and so forth. I hear a lot of to the right, to the left, this conversations of what the benefit of creatine is, and also the side effects of creatine. What is your opinion? Is it something necessary? Is it and what can you tell us about creatine?
Don't work so much with creatine. I think if somebody were in um, sort of a muscle building program, creatine can be effective. But I actually much prefer that my patients and clients work with collagen. I feel like collagen is is much more foundational. We're much more deficient in collagen. I mean, collagen is actually, in my opinion, it should be the fourth macronutrient.
All right, I you know something, I agree with you
Yeah.
100%.
So, there's fats, there's proteins, there's carbs, and then there's collagen,
Yeah, and
which
people don't.
occurs naturally in food, but we don't really eat a lot of collagen-rich foods anymore. So
Right.
before I even have a conversation about creatine with somebody who I really feel fits the criteria for taking extra creatine, I'll have the collagen conversation with them. And
Right.
so collagen, the best way to get that is through broth. Homemade broth obviously is the ultimate, but any kind of bone broth, like even fish, if somebody doesn't eat meat, or beef broth, if you make it and there's that, when you cool it in the fridge and it's got the gelatinous,
Hmm.
top upper layer, That's collagen-rich broth, and that is gold. And that I feel, especially for women going through menopause, especially for individuals with low bone density. So if they've been diagnosed with osteoporosis or with osteopenia, or they have arthritis and sort of creaking, achy joints, collagen is awesome.
That is all right.
Mm,
Biggest misconception from people about restorative medicine versus Western medicine.
mm.
Um, People say that people do things naturally is witchcraft and irresponsible, where a doctor can give you a pill. And I said this earlier, dealing with some of the issues that I had, the side effects were way worse than the symptoms I was given. And the response for the doctor was basically the reward is better than the risk. They're not taking the pill. I was. And matter of fact, I will make this publicly after a year of trying to find a more natural path to curing some of the problems I had. 2 weeks ago, I got a clean bill of health with my last blood test. And my doctor's first response was continue to take the medication that we have prescribed for you, which he didn't know I haven't taken in a year. So
Is he gonna watch this
well,
podcast?
you know something. Yeah, I hope he does watch it because every doctor I went to has prescribed a pill. The only doctor, and it would go Penn Medicine, that when I was going through with my concussions, they were the ones that recommended NAD, in which I've been doing that for 2 years. It's expensive, but I also look at the fact is I plan on living life. I'm not taking any of the money with me. The investment was in my quality of life is well worth the money spent. Now, the
Mhm.
first 4 days of NAD was tough, but afterwards it got a lot better. So um, I know my doctor doesn't like the fact that I challenge him on the reason why he's prescribing things, and it seems almost to be natural. Here, let me give you a prescription. Do you think doctors have a responsibility to try something more natural than to just to prescribe a pill?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I think the Hippocratic Oath kind of says it all. First, do no harm. So then the question is, if you have a patient in front of you with, say, high blood pressure, and you practice via the Hippocratic Oath, the first do no harm would be what potential irritants to the system can we remove? What nutrients at a therapeutic dose can we add in before we even talk potentially toxic pharmaceuticals? And I think that's been missed big time in the medical industrial complex and how traditional or Western medicine is set up, which is, it's for profit and so forth. So I think it's really important when a doctor has a patient in front of them to use the least invasive methods before incrementally, moving to more and more potentially dysregulating treatments. That's our duty.
I sure wish you lived closer to here. Seattle is a long ways away in order for me to make an appointment to come and see you. And plus, you have a beautiful place from what I've been told and some of the pictures on your website. Again, before I ask you my last question, tell us about your center itself. Where is it located in Seattle? Paint us a beautiful picture on all the natural. Do you have a spring that goes through there? If I could drink water directly out of your spring.
There is unfortunately not a spring here, but there is one in Olympia, which is a couple hours south of Seattle, like a big spring that people come to, and they come with their big buckets. But on Whidbey Island, at least close to the center, there's no natural spring. But I'm on well water, and it's pretty darn good well water.
Yeah. We get water when we go up to Lake Placid, especially when the fall comes. Um,
Mhm.
we love it hiking up there, and so I appreciate that. How do they get in touch with you again? Your website, and why haven't you written a book yet?
I'm actually working on a book. But the website is rebootcenter.com, and the Instagram and Facebook handles are Reboot Center. But you did ask about the clinic and
Right,
how we function here, and I just wanted to
right,
touch on that really briefly. So I do very specific, so for my patients, for people who are, who fly in or are in on site on the island or in the greater Seattle area, I do the membership-based restorative care. So initially, I will do data analysis. So I have a few different systems in place here where I can gather information about a person in terms of their autonomic nervous system function, their cardiovascular function, their sort of organ dynamics, their hormonal dynamics, and their sort of psycho-emotional state. I do sensory testing. I do memory testing, and a few other things. So I run them through a gamut of tests. I call it a precision health assessment. It takes about 2 hours to run the full series. And then I determine what optimal program or sort of treatment plan would get them from where they are with all of their sort of challenges and their sort of lifestyle elements that need to be modified and so forth to get them to where they want to be, not where I want to see them be, but where they want to be in, say, a year from now or 5 years from now. And it's all about how to strategically reverse disease to the best of our abilities. And so the systems that I have in place in the center to do that, I have a PEMF mat, I've got a Violite system, I've got Brain Tap, which helps reset sort of the brain waves. I've got a Balancer Pro system, which helps with lymphatic drainage and with uh, detoxification and a few other things. I've got an infrared sauna on site. I also do a lot of hands-on work. So I call it neurophysiotherapy, but it's a combination of different modalities. That's sort of a combo between uh, cranial osteopathy, craniosacral therapy, visceral manipulation, and a few things I throw in there, but I call it neurophysio work. Uh, I do standard office visits, and I also do a lot of coaching. So that's kind of, and then I do interim assessments to see where we are so that we can revise the treatment plan on an ongoing basis.
all right. You are, like I said, an amazing talent. You're a gifted doctor. I am proud to have known you. I do have one more question. Matter of fact, probably if you ever watch my show, one question actually leads to two. So I'm probably going to ask you another question. But in your own words, what is the vision and the future? What is your vision in the future of healthcare? What would you like to see?
That it is patient-centric, that the patient knows that they're in charge, that the patient knows that their health is their best asset, and that it's their duty to surround themselves with providers and a care team and coaches that empower them towards moving into that optimal state of wellness. Because really, the ultimate goal is to live life well, right?
Right.
And so the having a healthy body is just a stepping stone to living a quality life. To where if you want to go out and you want to go for a run, you can go for a run. If you want to go hike a mountain, you can hike a mountain. If you want to play Scrabble, you can play Scrabble. If you want to go run around with your grandkids, you can run around. So it's like freedom. So when I talk to my patients, I'm like, okay, the goal is uh freedom of body and clarity of mind. So that then you can take those two and go play, right? You can go do whatever you want to do, whatever you wanted to be when you were a 6-year-old and somebody asked you, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, you kind of already knew when you were like, well, so you want to create a body mind milieu so that you're boundless and not bound by pharmaceutical prescriptions or not even bound by supplements, right? Not bound by having to go to PT every week. So that if you want to travel the world, you can travel the world and you have to worry about having to fill your prescription in 30 days and where are you going to be and how are you going to get it. That's not
Right.
freedom, right? So the ultimate goal is freedom.
All right. This question has nothing to do um, with restorative healthcare, but I'm talking about more about restorative life itself. I think I've seen you on one of the Netflix videos you mentioned early on that you've done ultra races, whatever. I've watched several of those races. There's recently been a woman that did some extremely fast-paced race, and she's the first woman, and she set the best time over men and women. Is that you?
No, no.
Which races have you done?
Well, the most recent one was the Mount Baker Lake 30 miler. So it's basically 15 miles up. There's a beautiful lake near Mount Baker. And then the 15 miles back down again. It's all trail. I do trail running. I don't like road running. So
Right,
all of the races that I look for are on trails.
right.
There's one in July that I'm currently training for that's running around Mount Rainier. Do you know
I'm
about Mount
familiar.
Rainier?
I'm familiar.
Okay. Yeah, so it's called the Wonderland Trail, which is the entire circumference of Mount Rainier. It's 95 miles. So it's 30 to 35 miles over 3 days.
That's exciting. I think I told you in our earlier conversation, I'm doing my first 25-mile trail run in Lake Placid this summer.
Oh,
Any advice you want to give me?
I would say start the training soon and build up to it incrementally and do both a combination of distance work. You said it's 25 miles.
25 miles.
Okay, so the distance work, you can get up to like 21 miles and then um you don't need to train all the way up to 25. You train
Sure.
up to about 21, 22, and then really important is that the 1 to 2 weeks before the actual race or run that you don't keep actively training. You go into a little bit of a recovery before you run.
You're giving the same advice I give to my clients that do Ironman races and trail races, the same identical advice. And here I thought it was an original. You've already got the master plan. I want to
I'm glad we're
thank
on the
you.
same page.
Yep. I want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to thank you for our production chat and all the conversations we had. I think we provided a different option versus taking a pill. Hopefully, none of the medical professionals get pissed off and start writing hate mails and whatever. But I think all people should have a choice and option. And I think all medical people should look at the most easiest way in order to diagnose and prescribe a better health. You said it before, a healthy way of life instead of just treating the symptom. And I think we need to be conscious of, like you said, our environment, our lifestyles, our sleep, and the way we control stress and balancing a healthy life. Is there anything that we have not covered that you would like to talk about? I hate leaving and you walk away and say, oh, I wish he could have talked about that. I wish he had asked me. Did I miss anything?
There's so much we haven't covered, but it would take too long. So
Well, we only get 35, 40 minutes at the
I
most.
know.
If we took one of
It's
those
just the
things
tip
that
of
we
the
didn't cover,
iceberg, Kevin.
okay, only the tip of the iceberg, that means I got to have you back. Well, we definitely have to have you back, and I hope you do come back. I hope you enjoyed the show. I've so much enjoyed you. Again, we've only touched the tip of the iceberg. I know we've had some conversations regarding my issues with the government shot that I had and the way my body reacted to it. Maybe we can talk about that without getting me canceled.
Mm.
'Cause I have a feeling on that, and we can have an honest conversation about that, and maybe we'll do that. Um, so we'll go from there. I thank you for the gift that you are,
Thank you
and I
so much,
appreciate it.
Kevin, for having
And,
me.
and you're always welcome. Now, I've got a list of 100 people that I always ask what their secrets to success. We all have habits that get us up in the morning, put us to sleep at night, and how we live and how we treat people. I'm going to add you to that list of 100 people that I've been impressed by, and I want to know your secrets to your success. So if you don't mind, share with us your secrets to success, Doc.
Oh gosh. I think one is persevere. Even there's going to be setbacks. No matter what you do, there's going to be setbacks. Um, and I learned this. I'm a violinist. I'm a concert master of two orchestras, and like sometimes I don't play well, and that's okay. It's you have to I, you have to learn and then improve upon that. Learn. There's no failure. There's learn and then you improve upon it. The second thing is sleep. To me, sleep is golden. And I go for my 7.5 to 8.5 hours of sleep per night. And that's uh, that's essential for me every night because the better quality sleep I have, the more productive and active and present I can be during the day. And I would say that the third thing is to celebrate micro wins. I feel like we tend to be really hard on ourselves and we tend to not celebrate when we do something, when we do shift a habit, and when we um, when we do something, when we just do something well. And I think it's really important to pat ourselves in the back more more often for when we do um, have the little wins too. For me, what I do, actually, I have a journal. I can show it to you. I use these Oxford composition books.
Okay.
So I write everything in here. And every few pages, I'll have two columns. And on one column, I'll write in like what I want to accomplish during the day. And then on the other column, I'll write in my mini accomplishments, like all my little micro wins. So whenever I do something like I drink a glass of water, I'll write in I had a glass of water. Or whenever I had a really good patient visit, I'll write in I had a really good patient visit. Or, when I do something that's new or different or that's hard, I'll write it down. Whenever I had a good training session, I'll write it down. And that builds confidence and it builds momentum to want to have more micro wins. So that would be my third sort of tip.
I like the micro wins, and I'm going to add that. And I'm going to add today to my journal. I had an amazing interview with Dr.
Mm. Me
Jennifer.
too.
So it's great. So we have to wrap up. We have to invite her back when she writes her book, and we'll talk about her book. We'll invite her back anyway. So you are always welcome. To my listeners, we have covered a lot of information. I hope at some point in this episode, we have shared information that has enlightened you, have touched you, and maybe changed the way that you see modern medicine and look for a more holistic and natural approach. If you like what you've heard, and you'd like to follow us, go to RNK Productions and Network, and you can subscribe if you want. Now, I will say this: people that normally subscribe to this show are people that have a high call to action. I'm probably the only podcaster out there that has had 6 people to this very day, had a total stranger ask and answer this one question. And I asked what your ask is, and I'm going to ask you, Dr. Jennifer. 6 people have answered this call. So if you think of your wildest dream as something you'd like to have answered or addressed or something to change your life. If I asked you, what would your ask be, Dr. Jennifer? What would your ask be?
If I could have something changed in my life.
If you had one ask, ASK, all right, just like most people say, if you can have one wish, what will it be? If you had a dream that could come true. Now, granted, I have 6 people. This is going in my 4th year that someone had answered the call for these people. I didn't know this was going to happen the first time I brought it up, but I said I'm not going to stop. When I say that I only want people that have a high call to action, follow and subscribe, I I talk about the people that are in my life, my close circle of friends. When I call and ask for help, they react. The only rule we have is don't do anything to hurt us. And that's the way my whole circle of friends are. So when I looked at the fact I never wanted a million followers, which I'll take it if I get it, but if there are a million followers that have a high call to action that want to help people and change people's life, then I ask you to follow and subscribe. So I reserve a space for people that are doing and get stuff done. So if you had to ask, what would that be?
Man, I think it would be for me to have unlimited resources to help other individuals just get well, right? Like if I had a big endowment, I would want to like s- start teaching, kindergarten health classes, right? So that I could teach these little kids what it means to actually build a foundation of wellness, right? So I guess my ask would be not necessarily a monetary one, but just to have the resources so that I can shift the way this whole world, or at least the Western world, thinks about dis dis-ease and how to reverse it and how to just forge into wellness.
Well, I hope someone is listening and someone is in a position to address her ask, and I thank you. And so to my listeners, I will always say to grow, you must make some mistakes. To have confidence, you must address your anxieties. To forgive yourself, you must hold you accountable. And to learn, you must have to unlearn some stuff. And to exist, you have to show up more today than you did yesterday. You got to understand the power of your words. Take a note from me, your mindset messenger. My grandfather always said, when you get to a place in life that you can help someone else out, he said it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we will fade to black and we're out. Thank you, Dr. Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate it. It was fun chatting with you.
Thank you. Thank you.